Okay, welcome everybody to Jozi.js June. And I know what some of you are thinking, that at least you're home because it's very, very cold outside. 2020 has been a hell of a ride, but it's suddenly winter. We're halfway through, and thank you all for joining us or for watching this retroactively. We're all going to be together again soon, as soon as we get this thing under control, and we will have amazing meetups and in person and see one another again soon. So to just clear things up, we do have a code of conduct. So in your interactions with one another, we'd ask you to just be nice, be respectful, constructive. Let's work together on building a good community, and don't be spammy. So don't annoy other people just for the sake of it. If you have a problem with our code of conduct, which is available on our meetup site, or see any violations or want to just reach out to anybody, we have a really, really awesome council that looks after Jozi.js, and you can speak to any of these amazing people, either on Twitter or directly or on Meetup or physically in the real world when we get to meet again. I'm still trying to convince them about the wizard hats, but I'm not sure. I think we might need to go for a different model. Moving on, I'd love to thank our sponsors, which make all of this possible and are really, really good in supporting us and the community. So thank you very much. We couldn't do it without you. And the other people that we couldn't do it without is you the viewer, or you, the potential speaker. So if you are interested in submitting a talk and trying your hand at speaking at a meetup, please let us know. The link on the left-hand side. And if you are interested in catching up on all of the amazing content for the previous speakers, the link on the right-hand side. And I appreciate the irony of me having QR codes up on a video screen to a YouTube channel, which you're currently watching this on, but we're just going to breeze straight past that. So for the rest of the proceedings, we've got two amazing speakers coming up talking about very different topics to what we normally see. We're going to run a Slido Q&A board at the following address. So you can go to slido.com and enter in that code. We'll post the link directly into the live chat as soon as we can. And if you could just ask your questions throughout the course of it and upvote the questions that you like, I'll ask it of the speakers at the end of it. Kicking us off, however, for this evening, I'm going to hand it over to Thabiso. Thabiso, you're up.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Thabiso. I'm just going to share my screen now, start the presentation. Hope you guys can see this. So today I'll be talking to you guys about website mockup using Adobe XD and its little friend, well, it's not so little friend, Photoshop. So I'll just give you guys a little bit of an outline here. I'll start with an introduction just to who I am, why I'm here and all of that. I'll define what a mockup is, just so that we're all on the same page. I'll also talk about the advantages of mockups. I'll do a little bit of a demo. So, okay, the idea with this demo is that there's so many features in Adobe XD that we'll just build a mockup, and we'll just we'll see what we need along the way, and I'll explain that. And then there's of course alternatives to Adobe XD. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. Yeah, let's go. So who am I? I'm Thabiso Magwaza. I'm a recent graduate from WITS Electrical Engineering. I'm currently at BBD as a junior software developer, well, a grad there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. What is this talk about? Of course, this talk is about website mockups. So yeah, so by mockup, I'll explain shortly what I mean, just so that we're on the same page. What I hope to achieve with this talk is just to show you guys how easy it is to create one. If at the end of this talk, the next time you wanna build a website, the first thing you think of is, hey, let me just quickly mock this up and see how it will look like, that I would have achieved my goal today. Yes, so what is a mockup? So the first thing I did was ask Google. So of course, Google gave me this academic explanation. It talks about in manufacturing and design, a mockup, or well, mockup, however you write it, is a scale or full-size model of a design or device used for teaching, demonstrating, design evaluation, promotion, and other purposes. That's a mouthful. Anyways, they further explain that a mockup is a prototype if it provides at least part of the functionality of a system and enables testing. So right now I'm going to speak about mockup here in terms of web development. So in terms of a web design, I'd say a mockup is basically a prototype of the website. So it's going to have some of the functionality that the website is going to have. A lot of the times you're able to interact with it. It's going to have the right layout, the right fonts, the right images, and all of that. Just an idea of what you are going to do without writing a single line of code. Yeah, that's the very important part, though, is that you do all of this without writing code. So it's just to sort of quickly give you direction. The advantages of mockups. So the first and most important one, according to me, is the separation of concerns. So in web development, I find it very common where we as developers sort of design while building the site. So we sort of like have this design in the browser workflow where we sort of decide as we go how our website is going to look like. We know what the content is going to be. So we sort of like just put things there. And I found that that makes developing a website very, very difficult because we're mixing two very separate processes that sort of, make the whole thing seem a little bit more complicated. I always think of it as, say, as me trying to build a house without any floor plan or anything like that. So I sort of just, decide I want a house and I get some cement and start building, and I see a lot of us, myself included. I used to do this, and yeah, that's exactly how I used to do it. I just look at the neighbor's house and say, okay, well, the neighbor has 5 rooms, so I'm gonna put 5 rooms here, maybe a roof somewhere. Yeah. So just, it's that separation of concerns that having a mockup allows you to do. Flexibility as well. So with a mockup, what you can do is that you can experiment around with a lot of different designs, a lot of layouts for your content, and you can do that pretty quickly and easily. I'll actually show you guys how to do that, how easy it is to do sometime later in the demo. But if you are designing in the browser, I found that you tend to get married to a particular design because changing a layout or changing the styles and all of it is so much work. You have to write a whole new CSS, whole new media queries and all of that. So yeah, with mockups, you can sort of like have many different designs and see how all of them look and pick one. So it just gives you that flexibility. The other thing, of course, which is sort of a corollary, I still don't know how to say that word. It sort of comes from the other two, is that it makes development so much easier. I always hear people complaining about how difficult it is to write CSS. And yeah, I used to complain about that as well. But I realized it's because I didn't know what I was trying to design. So it's pretty easy to search Google and ask Google how to put a button in the top right corner of my website. But if I don't know that that's what I'm trying to do, then I'm going to spend a lot of time fiddling around with CSS and everything is just going to seem a lot more difficult than it is. So this, knowing what you're building before you build it makes your life very easy. Number 4, it makes collaboration very easy. I recently had an experience with this where a team of mine were building some site, and we actually mocked up the entire site before we even wrote a single line of code, and then everybody had the mockup. So it means that we could all work on the interface and work on different parts of it while conforming to the actual design. So even though different people built the site, it has the same look and feel. Everybody's using the same fonts, the same styles and everything. So it makes collaboration very easy. Yeah, so the mockup tool that we're going to use today is Adobe XD, and it's not so little friend, Photoshop. So we're just going to touch up on Photoshop a little bit, but the focus here is going to be on Adobe XD. So to get Adobe XD, you actually go to the Adobe website. I don't know. I just type on Google, download Adobe XD. So it'll get you here to the Adobe site. No, seems like I'm on the wrong place. Yeah, you just choose XD here. So it'll say buy now, but it's actually free. So don't be scared of by the buy now. You can actually just download it here for free. Yeah, and you get going. So once you've downloaded the thing, you install it. It's available for Mac and Windows. And I almost lied. No, it's not available for Linux. Yeah, it's just Mac and Windows. Yeah, so when you open up Adobe XD, you'll get a canvas sort of feeling like this. So you can choose, depending on what you're trying to build. Maybe you're trying to build it for, maybe you're trying to build a layout for a phone or an iPad or a website. We're going to pick website here because we're in web development. And this is what you are presented with. So on this is basically your web page. So this is, if you click here and look at the size, it's a 920 by 1000, yada, yada. So this is the width and the height of the web page. So what I normally do is I just extend this out, and this is like my canvas for a website. So like I said, I don't really have a planned out demo. So we're just gonna design something, and I'll talk about what we need as we go. But before I even start anything, the first thing that I always do is, well, if I'm going to use a grid layout, I know that a lot of people are fans of that. Adobe XD actually allows you to design for a grid. So let's say, for example, I wanted that 12 column bootstrap layout. So what I would do, yeah, so the first thing I would do is I would set it to have a single column here, and then decide on the width of my content. So let's say, for example, I want the content to be, yeah, this 1110. I've seen this a lot. I don't know why people use this, but they like it. So let's do that. So this would be like the width of my content. And then I would just divide, and then I just say I want 12 columns of this. So this would be my grid layout for the website. What else do I normally put on? Well, actually, it just depends on the site I'm building. So let's build a mockup. So what I have here is I'm going to have us build a simple portfolio website. So what I found was this picture of a guy. So let's say we're building this guy's portfolio website. So what you can do with Adobe XD is you can import images. You can import anything really. So we're going to import this image here, right? And let's say that we're trying to build, you know, one of those websites where like you have like the person's big head, maybe here, and then maybe you have some text. So you can actually write, maybe you have some text here. So what's important, another thing I want to show you guys is that it's very easy to resize text. It's very easy to work with all these components. So this is me resizing the text here. So let's say, for example, we want the website to look something like this. Then there's going to be some text here, and yeah, this is the guy's site. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to make this picture here to fill up this entire space. And that you just do by, or you can actually switch the grid on and off. So I always find it distracting to design while the grid is on. So I'm just going to switch it off. Come here and then switch it off. And then this is my canvas. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is this line here. So this here decides the width of the page. So this is shown, this line tells you where the viewport ends. So you would just design it like this. So let's say, for example, we want the site to look like this. We want to put the guy's picture here. So immediately here, we run into a problem where I want this background here to span this entire width here. So that is, I just did this to show you guys something cool that you can do, in that for you guys who like Photoshop, who know Photoshop, you can actually use Photoshop to Photoshop images while they are on Adobe XD. So what I'll do is that I'll come here and then I'd say edit in Photoshop. So I'm just going to do that quickly. Let's wait for that to load. Well, okay, Photoshop takes a minute. Anyways, so here we are on Photoshop. So the idea is to edit a photo. So Adobe XD allows you to edit a photo in Photoshop, and then it will edit the photo, the same photo in Adobe XD. So let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to use the crop tool here, and then I'm just going to extend the width of this thing here, the width of this image. Don't worry too much about the Photoshop. It's just for me to demonstrate something. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to duplicate this layer. And then I'm going to use this free transform thing. And then I'm going to just extend the width of this. And then I'm going to save this, right? So you see that I've just saved. So I've just extended the entire width of the image here. And then when I come back to Adobe XD, you can see that the width is actually extended here as well. So that's just a neat trick if you want to do something like this. So yeah, and then I have my guy here. And then next we're going to talk about text. So I want to write some text here. Maybe I want to say something like, hi, my name is Josh. I'm going to name this guy Josh. Hi, Josh. So I'm going to say, hi, my name is Josh, and Josh is a web developer, like all of us here. So what I would then do is that I need to format some text. So let's pick up some text. So what I normally do whenever I need text on a website is first I decide on the color of the text. So I don't know. I'm just this is actually going to be going in the direction of web design too much when I actually am trying to just show Adobe XD. So I'm just going to pick a color palette. I already picked a color palette for before. I'm going to import that. So you see in Adobe XD, you can actually import SVGs. So this here, this entire color palette is an SVG. And you can edit the SVGs inside Adobe XD. So let's say, for example, I want to write text. I'm just going to come to, yeah, here. So this is my main text, right? Oh, no, I'm just going to call it H1 for us web developers. So this is my H1. So I come here and I can actually choose the size of my H1 here on the side panel. So let's give it a young 48 pixels, and then that's H1. But what's cool about this is that I can come here to the layers, to the components, and actually add this as a character style. And then I name it H1. So what this allows me to do is that the next time I want to create like an H1 element, let's say, for example, I'm writing text here. This is text, right? I can just come here and then I click this and then it becomes H1. So let's say, for example, the text was smaller. I can just come here and then I click this and then it becomes an H1 element. So it'll actually just apply the style to every text that I decide. So I'm gonna just duplicate this. Oh, another thing that it's easy to do is duplication. So I can just duplicate this here, and then I'm just gonna make it smaller. So give it maybe 25 pixels here, and then I'm gonna call this H2. And then I do the same thing here, and then I have an H2, right? Awesome. So another thing that it does cool with is it works well with colors. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to create something called things called swatches. So if you look here, this is the color that I've picked here. So I can actually just add this color here into something called a swatch, and it sort of saves it, bookmarks it for later usage. So I'm gonna come here and I'm just gonna put all these colors in my swatches so that I'm able to use them easily. Right, that's the other image. So now let's write some text. Let's say, for example, I want to write what I said here. I said, hey, let's call him, I'm Joe, right? This is Joe. And then I'm gonna come, and then I can just select the text and actually change the color of the text, and there it is. Hey, I'm Joe. So we're just gonna put Joe here, and that is an H2 element. So what you can do actually here is you can sort of edit the styles as well. Once you've made them, they're not set in stone. So you can edit it and give it the color that you want. So I'm just gonna come here and copy the color. And then I'm gonna come here and then so what I'm doing here is that I'm editing the global H2 element. So, well, it didn't copy. Just edit it and huzzah. And this is it. This is, hey, I'm Joe. And then I'm just gonna give the H1 as well, the same color. Save that here. I'm gonna put this here, and then I say, let's just say I'm web developer. Spelling's horrible. Right. Let's say this is what we wanted our site to look like. Wow. So another thing that you can do that's always important is to see the text exactly how it would look like in an actual web page. So this is like this is how it would look like in a web page. So you can zoom in and get it to that level. This is our site so far. I realize this is actually quite a bit small. So you can actually just play around with the sizes of that. I'm gonna make this just a bit bigger as well. All right, this is our Joe. Another text formatting that I just wanted to show you, you can actually change the boldness of it. Let's say I wanted this to be bold here. You can actually use web fonts. Yeah, that's the nice part about it as well. I normally use Montserrat, so let's just put Montserrat here. And you can, so what's cool about this is that you can actually use the exact fonts that you're going to be using on your site on this on Adobe XD to give it that realistic feel, and so that you don't have to like keep changing styles when you get to your web page. So I don't know, I'm just going to change this here with the global style. I'm going to write Montserrat and use that here. Cool. This is Joe, the web developer. I'm just going to create a call to action here now. Let's say, for example, the idea of this, since this is a portfolio website, we want to get hired. So write some text here, and then we say, hire me. Of course, we can always change this to regular font. Change the size easily. And yeah, so let's just, oh, this is awful. let me not leave it like this. I'm just gonna, oh, here's another cool feature then that I wanted to show. So you see that we're creating a button here. This button is written hire me. So what you can do in Adobe XD is you can actually right click and make this button a component. So what you've then done now, oh, and enable some padding. So what you've then done now is that you've essentially done what you do in CSS, is that you created a component like an Angular component. So whenever I want to make a new button, I can just come here and drag from the components and make a button. here. And say, for example, I wanted to change the design of the button, I would actually just change it here and all the child elements would change. So so all the buttons that are of childs of this one would change. But what's also cool is that I can make child elements that don't actually inherit from the parent. So let's say, for example, I wanted to change this one. So if I change the color of this one, this wouldn't actually change anything. So yeah, so it allows you to work with components like that. I'm just going to change the color of this to something white. Cool. So this is Joe, the developer, and Joe wants to get hired. Next, I'm going to demonstrate something called repeat grid, which is actually one of the biggest selling points of something like this. Say, for example, Joe wanted to have a card design that shows off his skills, or yeah. So I'm going to just create this here, and then I'm going to go skill 1 here, and then I'm going to change the color of the text. So yeah, let's give it this color. And then this is his first skill. Skill 1, right? So if Joe wanted to do that, let's say maybe he gives it a little bit of border. Another cool thing, you can work with shadows as well here. So you can give it a little bit of a shadow. Increase maybe the shadow here, you know, increase, this is the blur of the shadow. And yeah, this is Joe's thing. Let's just change the background color to a little bit of a grayish here. And yeah, so let's say, for example, he wanted to do this. So what you do is that you can use something called repeat grid. So repeat grid allows you to actually just repeat an entire, so I'm just going to group this first. So it allows you to repeat an entire block. So I don't know why it's malfunctioning. There we go. Cool. So you see, just by dragging one of this, I can actually see what this would look like in a 3-column layout. I can work with the gutters as well. I can change the positioning of it. I can play around. I can actually do a lot of things with this. Maybe I wanted to have this many skills in my website. So that is how easy it would be to actually change this. And then, of course, I'd have to go and change each of the text manually. Skill 2, skill 3. Let me just change it. 4, yeah. And you can actually edit the grid once you've created it. So there we go. So let's say now I have 3 skills. Cool. So that's how easy it is to create a grid design in Adobe XD. So you can imagine how much you'd have to mess around with this if you were designing it on the browser. You'd actually have to define the grid areas and yada yada and do a whole bunch of CSS. But with this, I can actually just test out if a 3-column layout would be good, maybe a 2-column layout would be good with a gutter that is a bit larger. Yeah, so I can just go ham with this, you know? So that's the idea of this. It's the idea of having things become easy, you know, easy to do. Another important thing though that I want to show you guys is you can actually mock up animations as well in this in Adobe XD. So say, for example, I wanted to, I'm just going to do something crazy here. I wanted to click, whenever I click this, the other skill thing is gonna show up. So I don't know, it's gonna look stupid, but let me show you. Anyways, so what I would do is that I would do something like this. I would duplicate this, and then I'm gonna have this here, right? So what Adobe XD has is something called auto animate. So you see, you have 2 modes. You have the design mode here, and then you have the prototype mode. So the prototype mode is actually where you design the interactions with your mockup. And then the design mode is, of course, where you design the layout. So in prototype mode, I can actually choose to say that if I click this skill here, I will go to this page. Or maybe if I click hire me, I will also go, actually, let's not do that. Let's say if you click this, you will just go here, right? And then if you look at this interaction here, you can choose what triggers it, which is a tap here, or a drag, or a voice, or whatever. And then here, you can actually choose to either transition from it. Let me just show you what the transition looks like. So this is actually the site, how it looks like now. So if I click this, do you see that it takes me to this next page here, right? But we can do one better. We can actually say preserve scroll position, which would actually preserve the scroll position as I click something. So then it'll take me from here to here, right? And then you can actually change how the things transition. So I know that CSS developers, we love animations. So I can actually animate this to go from this to that. And let's just exaggerate this and make the animation last a bit longer. So now, if I click on this skill, it'll actually animate and bring up the other skill as well. Do you guys see that? Let me just do this backwards so that it brings me back. So if I click this, it'll remove it. If I click this, it brings it back, click it, bring it back. So you see, you can actually prototype the interactions of your website as well using a tool like Adobe XD. Yeah, I think that's pretty much a lot of the features that I wanted to show you guys. I could actually spend all night just remembering that, oh, hey, look, you can do this cool thing. Hey, you can do this cool thing. But what I actually wanted to show you is that it is an easy way to get a feel of what your website will look like very quickly. And allows you to then, once you have this, then you can move on to using something like CSS and HTML to implement the site. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to show you guys something like a mockup that I've built before, just to show you how crazy you can get with this thing. I'm just going to open something new here. And then, so this here was an idea that we were having, that we were playing around with, where we needed to build a COVID-19 testing online checker. So this was the first design that me and my team came up with, where you have this person coughing here, and then you can apply for a test, and then it'll bring you to this form. And then from the form, you can fill it in and then give us your symptoms and all of that. And then you end the application, and then you go back to the site, give you a little bit of, you know, what it looks like here. Yeah. So this was like a first draft that we did. And later we decided that, hey, we don't like this. So we actually wanted to change the design. And that led to our final design, which looked something like this. So you see, this is the actual final design. So you see that it has much the same content, but it's easy for us to swap around designs because we are doing it in a mockup and not exactly writing it in code. So the only code that exists is the code for this one. So with this one as well, you can sort of come down, you can sort of like create the animations. If you look here, this is more or less how the actual site behaves. So you can actually go to these things here. We also designed the dashboard as well, used a lot of animations for that. So for example, you can see here that you can actually mock up an entire dashboard and then go back and then go here and then, yeah. So all of this is done with auto animate. The idea here, what I would like you guys to take away from this is that it is actually very useful to create a design first before you actually go on to write code. And it's useful, it's not just useful, it's easy. So you can just spend a couple of hours, you know, playing around with an interface like this. And after a while, it'll be your best friend. I know that this is my best friend right now. So I'm gonna go back to the slides now. We were they were on Ivan. Did I lose my slides? Oh, they were here on Google Chrome. I'm gonna go back to my slides and we're gonna talk about alternatives. So you saw that entire interface with Adobe XD. It's not the only thing that you can use. I am very biased towards Adobe XD because I like Photoshop. So that's why I use that. But there's an excellent web-based one that you don't even have to download, which is called Figma. So if you guys were to go to, just write Figma on Google, it'll take you to this free collaborative tool. So what's nice about these things is that they're free. That's crazy, right? So all this functionality for free. So this is Figma. I'm just going to show you guys the interface quickly. So Figma, if you look at it, looks much like Adobe XD. They have a lot of the same functionality. You can animate with that as well. It's just a bit different here and there, but I think once you know one, you know all of them. So if you wanted to, another advantage of Figma is that it's more collaborative. So two different people can actually work on the same design because it's on the web and things like that. So I would definitely recommend Figma. If you're not really a fan of the Adobe stack, I would definitely recommend Figma as an alternative to a mockup tool. So with Figma, you see here, you can also do most of the things that Adobe XD can do, but you're doing it on the browser. So it'll be working here. Another reason I choose Adobe XD is because of that seamless integration with Photoshop, again, which I heavily rely on. Another one is Sketch, which is for Mac OS. I've never actually seen Sketch. I've never used Sketch. I've just heard about it. So yeah, so this one is for Mac OS that they use to design things. I think that brings me to the end of this talk. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for listening to me for this long. Yeah, any questions?
There are tons of questions, Thabiso. So thanks a lot for the good talk.
Thank you very much.
And I think the first question that people want to know is, can you export your design as HTML and CSS? And if yes, how clean is the output?
No, the answer is Adobe XD is no. You cannot export it right now as HTML and CSS. You can, I think there's some plugins. Well, what's nice about Adobe XD is that it's growing every single day. So there are some plugins possibly coming in the future. I don't know of any now, but so far, the only thing that I do know how to do with Adobe XD is export all your images and export all your text and all of that. So you export the resources that you would need to build. So for example, if I wanted to export this image here, I would just go to where was I? So somewhere here, man. Oh, it's on the home thing. So you can actually just export it. Yo, I've lost it.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can export. You can export the images and all of that. Let me not waste time looking for it. Actually, I'm lying. I found it. There it is. So I can just export it. So you can export it as a web design. So what this will do is that it'll export the image onto a folder, and then you can take the images and the SVGs and all of that, and then use that to build your HTML. I heard though with Figma that you can actually export HTML and CSS. If you look here, you see in Figma, you have this code panel here, and that is the code, I think, that creates this. I've never used it. Don't take my word for it. You can actually experiment with that yourself.
Okay. So the next question you've technically already answered, which is, can you create an interactive mockup with Adobe XD? And you showed us several interactive mockups. So
yes, definitely.
Does it have support for standard design systems like Material Design or Bootstrap, or if you have your own in-house one, maybe?
Yes, it does. So what you can do with Adobe XD is you can download something called a UI design pack. So I know I was taking an online course on this. Let me open something up here quickly. just to show you. You can open something called a design pack. You can download it free online. This is just, so this is the UI design pack for Windows. So it's called the Swooge UI, yada, yada. So what you do is that you'd use this design pack as sort of like a base for your own designs. So maybe, for example, if I wanted something that like a control that looks like this, I would then be able to copy this from that artboard all the way to the artboard that I want to work on. And if you see here, I've actually just pasted it. And then so you could actually build an entire mockup using these free material design, what do you call, they're called UI kits. So yeah, they're all free. Cool. Awesome.
So what are the limitations of the free version?
There is no limitation. There's no, oh, actually, I'm lying. When I first started with this, it was all free. So that's why I said there's no limitations. But for now, I haven't seen any limitations with the free version except for cloud storage. So if we come to where you download Adobe XD, so it all has to do with cloud storage. They talk about it. So it's the shared links, the document edits, and yada, yada. So I don't know, it's things that I've never used, but yeah, so it has to do with cloud storage and the number of links that you can create. So what they're talking about here with links is that you can actually share a design with Adobe XD. I actually forgot to show you guys that. That's actually the coolest part of this. You can actually share this with other people. So for example, if I wanted you guys to review my design, I would then generate a link here. It takes a few seconds to generate it. And then I would share this link with you. And then you can actually just run the link in the browser, and then it would show this mockup on the browser. So I think that's the limitation here, the number of links that you can make. But from my experience, you can do pretty much everything that you want to do with the free version if you're just an individual like me, just mocking up a quick website.
Cool, awesome. The form controls, you showed us now as a part of the questions that there are form controls that you can use. You can just copy and paste them from somewhere else. Design systems. Would you recommend this over Bootstrap Studio?
I've never used Bootstrap Studio, so I wouldn't know.
Okay, cool. That's a good enough answer. And then the last question we've got is, can you easily switch between mobile and other layouts?
Of course. Of course you can. So for example, let's come to this layout here that we have. So you see that all of this, when I created it for the desktop application. So what I can do is that, I forgot where this is. I can actually, whoa. Yeah, I lose some of these controls sometimes, forgive me. There's so much stuff to do here. So what you want to do though, is that you can actually create, let me just do it like this. I'm going to copy this here. And then maybe I would want to create a mobile version. So the mobile version would of course be smaller. And then I would then design a mobile version of this side onto this. Okay. But if you remember from the beginning, you can actually choose these things here. So this is the iPhone S. So this is how small the iPhone is. This is the canvas for that. And maybe the iPad. This is the iPad design here. So this is how big it is. So yeah, it's very easy to switch between whatever design you want. You just need to be willing to put in the hours. Okay, awesome. Good job, man. I think that's all the questions we've got. So thank you very, very much. We hope to have you back in future to hear some more of your adventures. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
Cool. So if we can get the next speaker, which is going to be Sheena, and Sheena is going to tell us all about Google App Engine, all of the things.
Hey everyone, let me figure out how to share my screen. Sweet, are we good to go? I assume that you can see the first slide, Mike?
All good.
All good. Okay, rock on. Hello, everybody. I'm glad you made it out on this cold winter evening. I'm going to tell you a bit about Google App Engine. I like it a lot. I am biased towards it because it's easy and super cheap and robust and many good things. So basically, I'm going to tell you about what it is and when you should maybe use it and when you can't use it and all of that good stuff. Who am I? My name is Sheena, and I am the CTO of Umuzi. There we go. And I don't really like social media, but if you want to get a hold of me, then probably ZA Tech is the best place. So if you're not on ZA Tech, you probably should be, and that's where you can find me. Then at Umuzi, what we do is we find high potential things, train them up, and get them jobs. So that's like my day-to-day mission, which generally implies building a lot of stuff at the moment because we had to shift to remote work really, really quickly, which meant shifting to remote learning very, very quickly. So that was cool and stressful. And so I build applications in order to build people, and I teach, I learn, and I manage. That's my life. So enough about me. App Engine is what you're here to hear about. So basically what it is a serverless thing. So it's one of Google Cloud's offerings where you can host your code without needing to worry about servers. Serverless is fashionable, as you know, but App Engine's been doing serverless for like more than a decade. I can't tell you exactly how long, but it's been doing this for a while. Basically, what you get to do is run your code on Google's infrastructure, which is nice because you get all of the like cons of, not cons, all of the pros and the cons of Google infrastructure. So you get Google scale for very, very low effort. So basically your application, if you get a spike in traffic, it just scales up as needed, which is cool. You also get really amazing SLAs. So with very little effort, you get 99.95% uptime, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so you'll notice some stuff on my slides is blue. You can have these slides, and these are links to useful things like SLAs and tutorials. So it's very, very, very easy to set up your first Google App Engine application. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a little while. But yeah, like nothing I'm going to show you now will be too tough. The last thing about it is that it's quite cheap. So basically, Google has a very generous free tier. So if you had an application that you wanted to run 24/7 for a year on the default instance size, then it would be for free, which is cool. But you can definitely run out of your free tier. So after that, it's pay per use. So that basically means that if you use up 10 minutes worth of compute, you pay for 10 minutes worth of compute. So it can be very, very cheap if you do things right. Yeah. So, but still, what is it? Serverless, what the hell does that mean? So the way, like, I'm not sure how many people are here who've interacted with cloud technologies before in any significant way, but when it comes time to host your stuff, it can be a little bit confusing. Like, most major cloud providers have like a lot of options, like a lot. So it can be challenging just to know where to put your stuff and why. So the way I like to think about it is in terms of how highly managed the tool is, and that gives me some clues about where to start. So you'll notice, yeah, it's sort of like a spectrum. So on this side of the spectrum, or on the bottom, you're in control. So basically, this would be your virtual machines and that kind of thing. So a virtual machine's wonderful because you have sudo, so you can do whatever you want. But the problem is you have to look after it. And you can't guarantee those uptimes as easily because you need to keep things up to date and keep things running and all of that good stuff. But you have absolute control. Like you can do whatever you need to do on this thing, which is pretty cool. But then as you move away from highly managed, from like you're in control land to Google's in control land, you end up, you get you kind of get handcuffs on in a way. Like there are certain things you just cannot do anymore, but Google does a whole lot of things for you. So for example, let's say you're hosting an application and it's a web app and you are pretty popular all of a sudden and there's a spike in traffic, and now a single instance of your web app is not strong enough to deal with it. So you want to be able to spawn up some extra ones. You want to be able to spin up new instances that work, and on top of that, you want to handle load balancing. So you want to make sure that when requests come to your web app, they go to the right instance of that web app, and you don't get one instance that's overloaded and all of that. So like if you're doing that with virtual machines, it would be a giant pain in the neck, and like could be interesting, could be a fun challenge, sure. But chances are the reason you're trying to host something is because you care about your code and you want that to be live, so you probably want to do something where Google will do that like hard infrastructure stuff for you, and you just get to like just host your code and trust that it'll work. So that's cool. But as I mentioned, like there are some handcuffs going on over there. Like there's certain things that you just can't do. So the downsides are that Google App Engine standard is associated, like the way you run it, you upload your code and then your code runs in a sandbox environment. So basically you don't have that much control over the sandbox itself. The sandbox is associated with, like you can choose your sandbox, but then you can't really change that much about it. So if what you need isn't handled by one of the supported runtimes, it's just like, well, sorry, you can't use App Engine for that. There are quite a few supported runtimes though. So I'm going to show you Node just now, but there's a bunch. There's no disk, and that's super annoying sometimes. But basically you can't just like save something into a file. It's not allowed. You can upload your code as files, but you can't actually, like for example, if you wanted your users to upload photos, you need to put them somewhere else. So your application, your App Engine app would just be a conduit to some other service that handles the storage. So this can confuse people sometimes, but basically like you can have a database that's elsewhere, and then Google App Engine would just communicate with that. And like that's the main downside, to be honest. Yeah. So the sweet spot, it has a sweet spot. Everything in this hierarchy here has a sweet spot. The sweet spot for Google App Engine is web apps and APIs, and like all this other stuff here. We can talk about it later if you want and have questions. I'll be happy to. But yeah, so for just regular web apps, this is good. I believe Snapchat uses it, and of course Google uses it as well. Cool. So I feel like I'm talking very quickly. I'm going to try to stop doing that. Time for a demo, you guys. So what we're going to do in this demo is deploy a Node application with App Engine, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour of some of the features that I personally dig and care about and use. So error reporting is one of those. Like if you've got something out there in the wild, you want to know when it breaks. You need it to shout at you when it breaks. So that's a big deal. It also handles versions, which I'll show you as well. Load balancing, which I mentioned, but I'll demo that. And you can have multiple services running at the same time. Cool, so demo time. All right, so as you can see, I have an application over here, so just VS Code, and I've got a really dead simple Express app, and it only does two things. It says, hello, Jozi.js, so it's a hello world, but today you guys are my world, so that's that. And then the ONO endpoint makes an error, and that's it. Then the package.json is very like there's nothing too interesting there. The only thing that I wrote was that line, node app.js. So basically it starts. So I can say npm start, and I can go here and hello Jozi.js version 1. And if I go to oh no, then I get a terrible error message, and that's very much as expected. Cool, so now I've got an app, and that's great. So what I want to do is deploy it. So there are a whole lot of links on this next page, which are useful. So basically, what I'm going to show you now is following along from one of the quick starts. So yeah, like if you want to do this yourself, just like come here, click that, and it will be easy peasy. So yeah. So the first thing you need to do if you want to deploy an App Engine app is install a thing called the App Engine SDK, or well, Google Cloud SDK. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing of how to do that because it's terribly boring, but it's explained in the link there anyway, so you can do it yourself. But basically what you get out of it is this tool called gcloud. And gcloud is a command line utility that lets you do all sorts of cool things on the platform itself. So it lets you interact with various parts of Google Cloud, which is awesome. Like it's very, very powerful. I'm not going to use that much of it. I'm going to use a fraction of it. Once you've got it installed properly, you need to authenticate it, because if you want to interact with your cloud resources, then it needs to trust you. So you say gcloud auth login. And oh, that's annoying. Cool. So I'm going to take that, put it over there, and I'm going to be myself. Cool. And allow all the things. Wonderful. If you do this in a regular terminal, it just opens the browser for you. VS Code is weird sometimes. It's great. I'm going to change that. Actually is all right. Sweet. So now I'm authenticated and life is good. So now I can start to deploy stuff. Basically, in order to deploy this, I need to be able to tell App Engine like what. I need to be able to just tell it which runtime I'm running in, and that's what this app.yaml is. So you make this YAML file, and it like literally the only line that matters right now is this one. I'm just saying like I'm running node 10, and that's it. So now I've configured my app and it can work on App Engine. Now it's time to deploy. So the next line I'm going to type in is gcloud app deploy, and it's going to break. Just fair warning. So the way it's going to break is by saying like, I need you to set a project. So it's like you need a project, you need to set a project variable, blah, blah, blah. What's a project, right? So a project, the way I think about it is like it's a directory or a container. Well, container is a bad word. I'll call it a directory in which live all of your cloud resources. So all of the stuff that you want to use in your all of the stuff associated with a specific, let me start that sentence again. Google Cloud allows a whole lot of different things. So App Engine is one of those things. Storage is another thing. Virtual machines is another thing. And maybe you have a whole lot of those things associated with a specific like client or environment that you're working on. So that would be a project. So it's a collection of stuff with a name. So I'm going to start off by making a project. So you can do this from the command line, or you can do it from the Google Cloud Console. The reason I'm showing it to you over here instead of on the command line is just because like this is easier to remember and discover. So you go to like console.cloud.google, and then your projects are all like at the top there, and you get to select one or you get to make a new one, which I'm going to do. And I'm going to give it a really cool name like Jozi.js node app. App engine demo. Yeah. And that's a great name. I'm going to create that. And it's pretty quick to do, which is nice. So you immediately have like a dashboard specific to this. So like reasons you'd have multiple projects is because like maybe you have a staging environment and a production environment and you need them to be the same but isolated. Maybe you have like client A and client B. So that's why you make lots of those. So every project has an ID. This one's cellular potion, something, something, great. And that's what I'll use here. So now I'm going to say, I'm going to try that again. Gcloud app deploy dash project. And wait a while. Cool. Now it asks me a really difficult question. It's like, where do you want to run your thing? It's like, ah, shit, I don't know where I want to run my thing. Where should I run my thing? I'm going to ask Google where I should run my thing. So the way you do that is you go to this thing called GCPing. And what GCPing does is it pings all of the, not really pings, but it sends a request to all of the different data centers that are belonging to Google. And so you get to see which one is the fastest. So assuming that you're developing in the country where you actually want to access your app, then you just wait and see like which one's the fastest. Oh, Europe West 1 is fastest. No, Europe West 2 is fastest, winning. Okay, cool. We probably have a winner. It might change again slightly. I'm going to go with Europe West 2. Sweet. So that is number 9. Great. Awesome. So now it's setting up my Google App Engine project, which is great. Like it's just deploying the thing. What's interesting though is because like these are called zones. Inside the zones are regions. So basically, there isn't just one data center in Europe West. What did I say? 2. There are a few. And what Google will do for you is put your app on 3 of the data centers within that that region or zone, in order to just make sure that like if something gets hit by an asteroid, you're probably going to be okay. Sweet. So blah blah blah. Another error. What have I done wrong? Access not configured. Am I logged in with the right person? Maybe I need to. It's odd. Oh gosh, you guys.
There's a link in the error message that you can just click and follow.
Yeah.
So the Google App Engine and Firebase stuff is pretty good when something goes wrong. Rather than giving you an unhelpful error, they're like, here's the error, and here is a link to exactly how you can fix this error, which is pretty cool.
You don't need to be a Google developer expert to sort it out.
Thanks, Mike. Awesome. Oh, crap. Okay, I am totally just going to do that and leave it as is. All right, let us see if it works now.
And hope that nobody on the live stream decides to DDoS your account and eat all of your credits.
It would ruin my whole day. My whole day. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment while I figure this out. Yeah. There we go.
We're all waiting in anticipation.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, Mike has a really great Chuck Norris joke.
I definitely do not.
Okay, so I'm enabling the API, and that is happening, which is great. And I'm going to share my screen again.
Okay.
Have you hidden your credit card details?
Luckily no. Although, yeah.
Maybe just hide them before you start screen sharing again.
It's okay. It's not like you typed in your GitHub master password in front of a
No,
class full of
no.
people. Only one
So-
person has done that. And in
try it
case there's
one more time.
ambiguity, it was me.
All right. So in theory, it'll work now because all of the APIs are turned on and billing is turned on, which is important. So yeah, even though it has a free tier, you have to turn on billing, which is kind of weird. Yeah, so that takes some time. While that goes, let me show you something else. So the Google App Engine, well, the Google console, it's pretty cool. It's got a whole lot of stuff in it. There's a whole lot of like really, really useful things, which I'm going to show you just now. But I might as well get into them right now. One of the things that has saved my life on many occasions is error reporting, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. So basically what you can do on your App Engine is say, whenever an error comes in, you want an email, please. And that's pretty cool. So you can turn on notifications if you want. So far, there haven't been any errors in the last 30 days, which is completely expected. Great. And this is up and running. So here's my app, Hello Jozi.js. And it's got a really fantastic URL. And it's got SSL, which is great. If I go to, who knows, then internal server error. This is expected because it was meant to happen. If I go to my, where did I put it? Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so if I go to my error reporting, it's going to refresh that. And there's my error. So it's like, well, this terrible thing happened just now, and it was seen in this thing, whatever that means. And if I click on it there, it'll give me the whole like error message, which is really, really nice and very, very handy. If I were to refresh this a bunch of times, then what's going to happen is a whole lot of errors. But one of the nice things about Google App Engine is that it'll group them together. So it won't send me like a million emails. It'll send me one email. It won't make a million lines and just like get noisy and annoying. It'll have a line per error. So you have these error groups, which are pretty nice to navigate. So that's pretty handy. What else is handy? Let us go. Actually there to versions. So there's a distinction between versions and services, and they're both pretty useful. So a service is like if you have multiple apps that do different things, you'd probably have different services. So I'm going to make another service, and I'm just gonna, so the way to make another service would be just to give it a name in your YAML. So basically what you do, say I've got like two applications, one of them's running Python and one of them's running Node. If I don't give the service a name, then it's just like its name is default, or I can give it a name like foo, and I can deploy that. And that's going to take a little bit of time again, because deploying always does. Yeah, so when this thing gets deployed, like it takes a while, and that's pretty strange. But under the hood, it's doing things like setting up load balancers and making sure this thing works to an extent and that. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience is necessary.
How about some questions while we wait?
That's actually a good idea. Oh, but look, it's alive. So now I can go to foo, and it's a separate thing. So it's got the same stuff in it as before, but of course I can go back here and I can change it, and I can say like, okay, cool, this is a foo app. From foo. Sweet. So I'm gonna just do that again, and I'm gonna call this one foo version 2. Sweet. Just because. Okay, cool. While it deploys, should we get a question?
For sure. So how difficult is it to host an Angular app in App Engine?
I haven't done it before, but I have hosted a React app, and it wasn't too bad. You just build the thing, and then you say host the build stuff. Yeah, so not terribly difficult. I don't think that there are any like quick start tutorials on it. You have to like dig into the Stack Overflow and that sort of thing to find it out. But yeah, it's not too bad. But there are alternatives as well. So if you can't get it working, then Firebase is really nice. And also, if you are just making like static content, so if you do server-side rendering stuff, so I'm not like into Angular so much. I have used it, but not a lot, or not recently. But if you can just like build it into a form where you don't actually need a server, then you can use a Google Cloud bucket, and you can just chuck it in the bucket and give the bucket a URL, and that'll work as well. So yeah, cool. So this is foo.
So one addition onto that point, if somebody does choose to use Firebase, they're actually using GCP and App Engine, but with an abstracted UI on top of it. So you are still using the Google engine.
Awesome.
Branded, I suppose.
Sweet. So, cool. So I've just upgraded foo to version 2, and now it says from foo, which is fantastic. One thing that you might want to do though is not just send everybody here, because maybe there's a problem here, even though it's running, like maybe you are testing out some new user interface goodies and you want to do some A/B testing. Maybe you want to check that this thing can handle load. Maybe so many different things. And so what you can do is manage traffic splitting, which is cool. Also notice like this URL, foo.cellular, is one thing, but then I can also go back to my original service as well, and that still lives. Like that's still a separate application that lives. So I've got these 2 applications, and my foo application has 2 different versions, and I can access both of those versions as well. So I can go, oh, it should have 2 versions. That's a bit weird that it says 0. Okay, that was odd. But anyway, so I can go to either version, and they each have their own unique and special URL, which is KIF. And if I wanted to, I could say split the traffic between the 2 of them, and I'm just going to make it random, and I'm going to make it like 50-50. And now, once that's done, if I go back to this and I refresh it a bunch of times, it should change. Yeah, in theory. Okay, cool. It is saved. Ah, there we go. So now it's randomly sending me to one version or another, which is useful. Like so specifically, A/B testing is one reason you'd want to do it. I think that might be everything that I wanted to show you. Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Oh yeah, I also wanted to show you AppYAML. So our AppYAML was really, really simple. And what you can do with it is like way beyond what I showed you there. So the first thing is you can select a different runtime. So those are all the different ones that you can do. So, I mean, it's quite a selection. It's not everything. You can't run your closure application or anything like that. But I mean, it's a good selection. Beyond that, you can specify like different endpoints doing different things. Environmental variables, really, really useful. Don't put any of your secrets in there. You can also specify just like how strong a machine you need. So if you're running something that needs lots of RAM, then you might want to level up your instance class, and there's a reference to say what that all means. You can also specify things like when to scale, how many instances I want running just in case at any point in time. So it's pretty versatile, and that's cool. Yeah, what else? I think that's it. Yeah, I'm done. I will take some more questions.
More questions. No, you're not done yet. So the first question is, this looks very similar to Azure's app services. And in fact, this is from Ryan. Ryan, you can ask your own damn question.
All right. So yeah, no, this seems really, really cool. And I think if I use some of my apps on App Engine and some of them on app services, I can probably get a lot of apps hosted for really, really cheap. My question was, I'm curious if you've used something like app services or maybe Elastic Beanstalk, and if you can maybe contrast how that compares.
I can't say that much about it. I've used something on AWS once to host a Hugo site, but it wasn't very nice.
It?
Yes, yes, I do.
Sounds about right.
So I stopped doing that. But it was only one experience that I had. It wasn't a good experience, but it was just like I can't give you a proper comparison.
So I'm gonna chime in. I'm sorry, Sheena.
Go for it.
I've used app services and Azure stuff, much like Ryan and Jerry, a lot, and Lucky. I think that's because we get corporate credits and it was free for us. That's probably why.
That is exactly why.
Yep. So I feel like the individual bits and pieces, as much as they might not all be as fully fledged as the Azure options, they work together a lot easier. Like having tried several times to get the Azure App Insights working properly, the App Engine example with errors and error logging just works. You don't even have to do anything. So
I have to second that. Trying to get App Insights working is often, it's like, oh, I'll just take half an hour and get this up and running. And then it's day 2 and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
App Engine also has cool stuff like debugging online. So you could have a running app and just like have a debugging session into your running app. And like if there's something weird happening and you just don't know, you can go in there and spy, which is cool. But it does take a little bit of setup, which is why I didn't show it now.
How does it handle that if you've got multiple instances?
It just does. So I've only ever tried it with one, but so you don't do it from your local machine. It's got a front end for it. Maybe I should actually show you where it is. We won't be able to like actually do it properly, but it exists and you can configure it to make it work. So somewhere here. Is it in here? No, maybe error things. Debugger. So basically you can select any of your, like any service, any version of the service, and you can spy on it and you can see any part of, like, so you can look at the code, which is nice, which is why you probably don't want to put like secret keys in there. But you could do things like add a breakpoint. Well, not specifically a breakpoint. It won't actually stop your code from running, but you can see what the variables hold, which is handy from time to time. Yeah.
That is awesome.
So some more questions from the live stream audience.
Cool.
Does it scale your app automatically? Or do you need to manually update the instances, etc.? If the former, can you set limits?
You can definitely set limits, because otherwise it would be ridiculously dangerous from a financial standpoint. So you should definitely, so you can set limits, and you should definitely set limits on the budget that you assign to Google Cloud. So when you set up your billing, you say how much, but for this specifically, you can say the maximum number of instances, the minimum number of idle instances. You can say, I think, also the timeout, like if an instance is idle for X amount of time, then it should die. So you have a fair bit of control there, and it's simple. It's just in the YAML file, which is nice. Then on top of that, when you deploy a new version, I stand to be corrected, but I believe this would be the case. It probably does kind of what Kubernetes would do. So like if you deploy a new version of a thing and it's got like 5 instances running already, then the 5 instances would decrease while the new version would increase. I think it would probably do that. I've never actually properly checked. Mike might know. Yeah. But that's the best answer I have.
Okay, but it's a good answer, which leads into the next question, which I think is really important for anybody that's even tried anything on AWS. How is the pricing and the ease of setting up budgets so it doesn't eat all of your monies?
So setting up a budget is very easy, like super, super easy. And you also can set up like limits. So you can say, when it hits 20%, send me an email. When it hits 50%, send me another one, so that you can get notified over time. So that's nice. For the most part, I find the console, like this application, really easy to navigate. The billing is kind of the exception to the rule. It can be a little bit weird sometimes if you're running multiple projects, but setting it up for the first time, like if you're running one thing or if everybody has the same billing account, then it's pretty nice. What was the other part of the question? Billing. You want to know how it compares to other things, other platforms. So there's this handy calculator. How to say, Google Cloud pricing. So you can check yourself. This thing's also like, it's pretty easy to use. You can, once it loads, you can see like all of the different things that Google Cloud provides, and you can say like, hey, I want cloud DLP, and how much does that cost? So you have a whole lot of options. So we were talking about AppEngine, and we were specifically talking about standard. So, okay, so one thing you're going to come across if you use this is there's standard and there's flex. Flex can run Docker containers, but it tends to, like, I've never found a good reason to use it. So it says flex because it can run, like its internal environment is flexible, but it doesn't scale quickly, and you always have to have an instance running. So yeah, this one's usually better. So let's just say I have an instance per hour, and I'm going to see how much that costs. And it costs 0 per month. Great. So then I can try different instance classes. So again, like you just need to look that up, and you can, I assume that there are similar calculators for the other platforms, but I haven't checked. So you can just do the trade-off. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know how easy is it to share or restrict access to different parts of the project with different people in your team?
So that's another thing that isn't 100% intuitive, because sometimes you want to give somebody a permission to a thing, but then they need other permissions just to navigate to the thing, and it's weird. But basically, so you go to, I'm an admin, and over here you can organize all sorts of things. So you can make roles and groups and things like that. You can also just give specific people access to different things. So yeah, so you can just like create people here. So you can see there's me. So I made this, and I can add a new person and give somebody else permission. I'm the owner, so that means I get to do absolutely everything, but you can edit it. I'm just gonna edit that one because, yeah. So you can give them access to like a whole lot of different cool stuff, which is nice. You can also make service accounts, which are very, very useful. So if you want to make like an account for a machine to have access to your stuff, you know, for like another application to have access to your stuff, then you'd make a service account and then give that the rights that you need. So it's, yeah, it's like really versatile.
Cool. Very cool. Then I think more about like the plumbing of it. Would middleware still work in the Node application? And is the application state still maintained?
So the middleware, yes, because it's just part of the Node application. So it will be like it's part of like it'll be part of the Express application in the end. So yeah, you could also do something like have another service as the gateway and route stuff through that, and then have your middleware there if you wanted to. Then in terms of application state, your app, like it is not, it's ephemeral, you know, so it's, you can't trust that it'll just like be there forever, and it doesn't have any of its own storage. So it'll have application state for a bit, I think. Like I haven't actually tested this, but it's not something you should rely on, because the app's going to die and then a new one will pop up and it doesn't remember anything. Yeah.
Good answer, yeah. So you told us not to put secrets in the YAML file. Where should we be putting our secrets?
That's a good question. So there's this new thing called secrets, which I haven't used much of, but that's one option. So you can just put your, yeah, so it's kind of like, I'm not actually sure if it'll work from AppEngine or not. I haven't tried it, but there is like a Kubernetes secrets thing that exists, and you can use it with different parts of Google Cloud. So you can use it with like Google Cloud Run, but I don't know if you can use it from here. Then besides that, yeah, it's a tough question. Like you can put stuff into different, there'll always be like a secret that you need to unlock the other secrets. So it gets a bit tough. Like if you have like let's say you put your secrets inside the data store. So Google's got this thing called the data store, and you can restrict access to the data store. Great. And then nobody can just like go there and look, which is useful. Yeah. So that's an option. In the end, you need to restrict the access to something. Yeah. So I don't really have a very good answer to that, unfortunately.
I think I stand to be corrected, but I think it does have key management. So there are additional services that you can use where you can give this service access to like a keychain for an environment, right? And it doesn't actually know any of it. And the keychain just says, well, you're a Google Cloud thing. So I think cloud key management service, does that sound reasonable? I don't know. Something
yes,
like that.
Yes, it's called key management service.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
It'll be something like that, and it'll work the same way as you would with, is it Vault? Is it HashiCorp Vault? Am I thinking about the right thing? Yeah. So it'll work the same way as that, where you'll just have context of this thing. You'll ask it for this key, and it'll give you the key, and you'll never know.
Okay.
I think. But
This service isn't free.
Key management's not free typically. So can you have multiple free apps for one tenant?
So yes and no. It depends on how much free app time you use. So the free tier is it's a certain number of instance hours and like a certain amount of traffic and a certain amount of XYZ. So like if your combined resources add up to more than the free tier, then it's just, you're going to have to pay for that. So you can't just spread your stuff out very, very thinly and expect Google not to notice and mine all the Bitcoin or anything like that. But what you can do is make a new account and they'll give you $300 worth of credit. And then it's like you're free for a while, and then you're free for a while longer. And then hopefully after that point, your application is making money. Yeah. So it's generous, but it's not forever.
Okay, good answer. And because it doesn't host data, what is the alternative for storing stuff like images and presumably other static assets and stuff?
So there's a couple of different things. So the one thing is Google Cloud Buckets. So I think Amazon also has a bucket thing. I think they use the same terminology to mean the same thing. And that's just like a weird directory structure. So storage here, you can make directories effectively, and then you can put stuff in there, and you can access this from your application. So that's one option. Another option is there is such a thing as Google Cloud SQL. It's just Postgres or SQL or MySQL, depending on what you want. I think it does MS SQL now, but I'm not sure. So that's an option as well. Then there are other storage things that are very googly. So Google Data Store is a thing, and that's pretty cool. And BigQuery is a thing, and that's pretty cool. Those aren't really for blobs, though. Yeah, so generally what I do, like I really like SQL, even though lots of people say it's not fashionable anymore. I think it's pretty cool. So what I'll often do is I'll have, I'm also more a Python person than a Node person. So I'll use an ORM and just tell the ORM that whenever you want to store a file, put it there, and then it just uses it. So it's a configuration problem rather than anything else. Yeah. And then like you're not really that restricted. Like if you needed to do something wild, you can just get a virtual machine, or like you could do the Kubernetes thing as well if you feel so inclined. And then you can have your storage service thing running there and get your app to interact with that.
Okay. I'm going to gloss straight past the Python comment, even though I threw you a dirty look, and the ORM comment, both of which are easy.
They're so convenient. Shit.
And in the last question from Karen, in terms of scaling, how quickly do these services start up? Is it as fast as a Docker container starting, or is it the startup time of an actual node?
So I think, I can't tell you offhand exactly how fast it is. With Google App Engine Standard, it's not a container, it's like a sandbox. So I think it should be pretty quick. I think it might not be as fast as a container, but it's not as slow as spinning up a virtual machine. If you're using Flex, it's a virtual machine, and then that's slow. So yeah, probably reasonably quick, but I haven't really tested it.
Okay. Good answer. And I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you very much, Sheena. That was really, really valuable and really cool. And thanks everybody for joining. It was a lot of fun. Stay warm because it's super chilly out. Stay home and stay safe. And we'll catch you in a month's time in July.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. It was real.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.